You know, I think it's kind of a mixed bag. It was obviously such a painful thing, and so that's been a shock to people. But some of the shock jolts people out of their complacency, and being jolted out of complacency is a good thing. And then the evidence that I was talking about earlier for has it produced anything is these historic elections that we had in Virginia just 4 months later, where if you look at the turnout in that governor's race, if you look at the candidates that were winning, African American being elected lieutenant governor, diverse candidates being elected of all kinds, immigrants, immigrant-born, very diverse candidates being elected. I think you really can't completely explain that election without seeing it as a rejection of the hate that people saw on display in Charlottesville.
Division.
Yeah, during the Civil Rights era, 1960. Yes. I think there are. I mean, I've been grappling with 2018 and what year does it most remind me of in my life, and the year it reminds me of is 1968. I was 10 years old, the assassination of Martin Luther King, the assassination of Bobby Kennedy, Vietnam War protests. I do think today has a parallel to that time. I think 2018.
What's driving it now?
Look, I think sadly a lot of it is being driven by a president who likes to divide rather than pull together. And when that example is set up from the top, it tends to percolate down. Oh yeah.
Social media.
They did, sure, they did. But I think they were unacceptable to say. People were maybe a little more covert about revealing. This president has made it okay for people to put stuff out in the open. He didn't create it, but he's taking advantage of it and stoking it. And that means those of us who want to pull people together, we have an obligation to do that. But again, Margaret, if you look at, you know, peaceful protest, Black Lives Matter, the Me Too movement, March for Our Lives, the Women's March after the inauguration. If you look at the Virginia elections and the turnout in 2017, which were historic, you see a huge number of people saying, I'm off the sidelines now. I'm going to get involved to show that no matter what the president says or no matter what anybody says, we're not a nation of division. We're not against one another. We are still that for all nation, those words that we use at the end of the Pledge of Allegiance. And so what gives me hope right now is the incredible engagement that I see by our citizens standing up for the values of the country, the equality value from Jefferson and Lincoln at Gettysburg. You know, that's our true North Star. They're right.
They'll learn from it.
Well, I don't know about celebrating. I don't see a celebration, but I do think you have to represent your history. You can't whitewash the ugly. But you know, but tell the full history. Are you telling the full history? If people say protect Confederate monuments, but there's no monuments to anybody else, well, is that really about history? No, you've got to really tell the history, the whole history. And some of it's ugly. And that can't be whitewashed, I agree, but we also shouldn't, you know, celebrate or hold up something as good that was bad. So it is it's a complex question. The right way to deal with history is for the leaders of today to be in dialogue with the citizens of today about the way our community wants to be represented. And we shouldn't be bound by decisions that were made 50 or 100 years ago. The leaders of today have to discuss and dialogue with their own citizens about the way they want their community and their history to be portrayed. Well, I'm not exactly sure, but I do believe this, that in you know, synagogues and churches and in community centers around Charlottesville and around Virginia, I expect to hear messages of unity and resolve and backbone and spine, backbone for standing up for equality, standing up for the true values of Virginia. So I know that there will be a lot of leaders, religious and others, who will be preaching, teaching, educating, encouraging around unity, and that I know will happen, and that is something that the nation needs right now.
Within the Republican Party?
Well, I value Republican colleagues. For example, my friend Senator Bob Corker of Tennessee. when President Trump mishandled the Charlottesville rally and said, oh, look, there's good people on both sides, when he demonstrated a complete confusion and couldn't call out white supremacy for what it was, Senator Corker, and there weren't many, there were not many, but Senator Corker stood up and said, this president is not shouldering the responsibilities of being a president. He doesn't really understand the need of this president to bring the nation together. I do think more in elected office need to stand up and promote unity and strike back against division preached from the office of the president or anywhere.